Hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. We've got another Nowcast for the end of March, and not too much changes in this one, but it's interesting. It's the first Nowcast we've had since the general election, really, that shows Reform going in the wrong direction, both in terms of their national polling and the number of seats the Nowcast predicts they would win in the House of Commons. And look, Labour's decline continues in both cases. Their polling numbers and their seats in the House of Commons, they just can't catch a break. And with the spring statement coming up on Wednesday, I don't imagine that either of those numbers is going to improve much for Labour in the foreseeable future. But let's get straight into this. So yeah, look, we spoke about in the last video the split in Reform. And that being potentially damaging for Reform. Look, it hasn't damaged them too badly, but it is, like I say, the first time we've really seen them going in the wrong direction for a long time. So their polling numbers have slipped by between 1 and 2%, depending on what polls you look at. On average, about 1.5% down from a month ago. And that translates into them having 13 less seats than the Nowcast at the beginning of March. Not a huge number in the grand scheme of things, but obviously for a nascent party of Reform standing, they kind of need to maintain their momentum going in the right direction. So let's have a look. Look, we said last time you could pretty much make an unbroken line of Reform constituencies all the way from the East Coast through the Midlands, almost across to the border with Wales. You can still do that, but it's much more interspersed with Conservative constituencies now. So on the East Coast of Lincolnshire, for example, we can see Reform, Louth and Horncastle still ahead by about 3% ahead of the Shadow Education Secretary Victoria Atkins. Of course, Boston Skegness is a safe Reform seat, Deputy Leader Richard Tice there, and they're still holding on in South Holland and the Deepings. But in Sleaford and North Hykeham, the Conservatives have edged back ahead, and Father of the House Edward Lee, Conservative MP for Gainsborough, has edged back ahead there as well, ahead of Reform. So that's two seats that have swung back to the Conservatives. Now, I made a point a while ago, before my hiatus. I said, when we're looking at the Midlands, actually, in Warwickshire and areas like that, where the margins are very tight between the Conservatives and Reform, expect to see those seats oscillating between Conservatives and Reform as the Nowcasts come out, because the margins are just so tight. And so, a relatively small decline or increase in polling has a big effect on these constituencies where the margins are so tight. So look, that's Lincolnshire. That's kind of like a Conservative heartland, safe area, traditionally safe area for the Conservatives, where they're fighting back a bit, but they've still lost the entirety of that East Coast, as you can see. In Essex, similarly, there was a few constituencies here that were flipping to Reform as of the last Nowcast. One of those was West Suffolk, where the Conservatives are now back at 1% ahead. Likewise in Harwich and North Essex, where the Conservatives have managed to get almost 2% ahead of Reform here as well, and also Malden, where the Conservatives now 1% ahead. So again, just that very slight reduction in Reform's national polling has allowed the Conservatives back in these very tight marginal seats. But look, let's not forget, these are supposed to be safe Conservative seats. These shouldn't be marginals, but they absolutely most certainly are now. And so, although Reform have gone in the wrong direction in the last month or so, it's still extraordinary what they've done to the political landscape. Not too much change in Kent. Herne Bay and Sandwich has now flipped back to the Conservatives. It would be a Conservative hold. Last month, this was projected to go to Reform. So look, the story is the Conservatives have been allowed back in by Reform's slight drop-off, but the Conservatives haven't engineered that themselves. Like I say, it's really wholly a function of Reform's civil war that's erupted between Nigel Farage and Rupert Lowe. I mentioned in the last video that, in my opinion, the Conservative Party is a bit of a rudderless ship at the moment. I think that's how most people view them. And so this kind of fight back for them, they're net positive about 24 seats from the last Nowcast. Last Nowcast had them losing 7 seats, even from their worst election defeat in July. And now this has them up 17 seats from that election. So net from Nowcast to Nowcast, they're up 24 seats. but it's not of their own making, really, and they're going to have to work very hard to actually engineer any sort of polling bounce, and which will then reflect in the Nowcast to them actually winning a significant number of seats for a party of their stature. Look, as for Labour, look, we said the decline just continues. A bit of good news for them. Again, it's not on them, it's because of Reform's decline. They have managed to flip back Jarrow and Gateshead east from Reform, who were winning this last time. Likewise, Gateshead, Central and Wickham are now going to Labour. Previously that was going to Reform. But look, it's still terrible news for Labour. They're getting annihilated. Despite those two, they're getting annihilated up in the the northeast by the Reform Party, who are still doing very, very strongly up here. And likewise in the north of England, I'm not going to labour on it because we've spoken about it a lot on this channel. You can see just how much damage Reform's doing to Labour in their former heartland there. A long way for Labour to go if they're going to get back into this. This Nowcast has them down again, even from the last Nowcast. They're now almost 100 seats short of a majority. They are still the largest party in the House of Commons, mind you. That's worth mentioning. But at the moment, it seems inevitable that won't be the case in a few months' time if things continue as they are. Let's have a quick look at the change map then. In terms of the seats changing hands, look, you can still see, despite the bad news or the last few weeks for Reform, they're still the big winners in this Nowcast. Look, with the SNP up in Scotland doing well too. Reform are still going from now 4 MPs. This Nowcast suggests they'll get up to 127. That's an increase of 123 for a nascent fledgling party. That is still astonishing. Let's not forget that. But like I say, for a small party, embryonic really, they need to try and maintain their momentum, and I'm sure they'll be making efforts in the coming weeks to regroup as we head into the local elections, the county council elections. In England, they'll be looking to regroup and push on again. And I think, I've said before, I think that May the 1st local elections will be a watershed moment where if Reform can pull off significant gains and essentially be the big winners of that election, it will just spark the belief in a lot of people that actually Reform can actually win real elections and translate their polling into real tangible political gains. And I think that will put rocket boosters under their polling actually, and under their Nowcast performance, and that will have them going in the right direction. But as we've seen with the recent problems they've had, it's a tightrope for them, and they must be very careful. They can't afford more slip-ups like they've had in the last week or so, or they will torpedo their chances. Outside of those three parties, look, the Liberal Democrats are not going to do anything. The Lib Dems are at their peak. They won't win more seats than what they have here, but they're also not looking like they're going to lose many seats either. The Conservatives are not making any ground on them whatsoever. They are miles ahead in these constituencies where the Conservatives previously won, and indeed constituencies that were previously Conservative heartlands. I'm just flicking through them here. You can have a quick look at them as I go through. The Conservatives are not fighting back at all against the Liberal Democrats. The Liberal Democrats aren't extending their lead either. It's really just status quo. And it's bad news for the Conservatives because the Liberal Democrats took a huge chunk out of them in July, and the Conservatives have been unable to fight back against them. And with Reform breathing down their necks in Kent and in Essex and in Norfolk and in Suffolk and in Lincolnshire, it's existential for the Conservatives, and there's a lot of work that needs to be done by Kemi Badenoch and the leadership to get them back in the fight. My opinion is only one of Reform and the Tories will come out of this. I don't believe that they can coexist forever. There will be an eventual winner on the right of British politics. We'll have to wait and see to whom the victor will be. But at the moment, like I say, with the margins as they are, it's looking ropey for the Conservatives. If Reform can turn their polling back positive and regain the momentum they had, look, we said Herne Bay and Sandwich, that's going to go to the Reform Party. Southend, Westonleigh will probably go Reform, although Labour in the hunt there as well. Malden will go back to the Reform. Witham, even Priti Patel in Witham is not necessarily safe at 5% ahead. Harwich and North Essex is there or thereabouts. We mentioned as well West Suffolk. There's a lot of marginals. Mid Norfolk's only 3% in it. 1.2% in South Norfolk, although that's actually against the Labour Party there. Broadend and Fakenham's only 3.7%. There's a lot of constituencies that are very, very close to flipping from Conservative to Reform, and all it will take is a bounce in the polls for Reform, such that they were enjoying on a weekly basis not too long ago. We'll have to wait and see if they can regain that, and if they can, then they're going to be in a very, very strong position, and we'll expect to see their Nowcast numbers increase dramatically. As for the Labour Party, I don't see any light at the end of the tunnel for them at the moment. The economic picture looks bleak. The spring statement is going to go down like a bucket of cold sick. The only real bright spot for Labour at the moment has been Keir Starmer's handling of foreign policy, which generally has gone down quite well. But even that's only in relation to Russia and Ukraine. The Chagos Islands deal is generally quite unpopular, but he has been seen to handle the peace negotiations in Ukraine quite well, quite statesmanlike. That's gone down well, but it's clearly not translating into any sort of polling gain. So that's the Nowcast for the end of March. We'll await and see what the next one brings us. Like I said, still it's fascinating times in British politics. The landscape is shifting so quickly. Please do subscribe to the channel for more content and coverage of it all. I'm trying to stay on top of it as we move into those local elections in May. So thank everybody for watching. If you could, please leave a like on the video. That would be great. Like I say, if you're interested in more of this coverage, please do subscribe and join this growing community. And thank you everyone for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.